Alright guys, so today I'm going to explain why functional training just does not exist. And we've known this since the 1940s, so we've known this for a pretty long time, but it's because of motor learning, scale transfer, and the loss specificity, right? Which means that if you're to practice one movement, that particular movement won't transfer over to another movement, even if those movements are very similar. An example I like to use is, let's say you're practicing on a keyboard, right? So this is my fingers have adapted to this type of keyboard. So when I type on something, my neurological brain and nervous system has adapted very specifically for me to type on this exact same keyboard, right? Which means that if I were to use another type of keyboard, or an Apple keyboard, or like any other keyboard out there, you're going to realize that you're actually not going to be able to type as fast or as accurate as the one you're used to. This is known as the law of specificity. This law states that when we learn a very particular movement, right, our nervous system is highly specific and only adapts and only becomes more functional with that exact same movement. It's as specific as a keyboard, right? If you were to give me another keyboard, it's not going to transfer. You can actually make it worse. You can have negative transfer, right? So a lot of athletes, they like to practice one movement, right? And then they think that this movement that is similar to the movement on the actual sport, it's going to like transfer over. But actually, you can have negative transfer, because if it's too similar, just because it's similar does not mean it's identical. Remember, our brains are very highly specific neurologically in terms of how our nervous system recruits motor units to basically fire them in a way in coordination and exact speed. It's like you guys don't understand how complex our neurological system is, right? And when our body adapts to learning how to type on this keyboard, if you were to use a keyboard that even is closely similar to this, even if it's similar, it's not going to be the same keyboard, right? Which means that we're going to mess up on the other keyboard, even though they're the same exact activity. Remember, typing on a keyboard, the same exact activity. But how come typing on this keyboard does not transfer to another keyboard? Why? It's because my brain and nervous system has adapted to using this type of keyboard, which means that if I'm going to learn how to use this keyboard here, another one, my brain is going to have to learn an entirely new skill. See, that's the difference, guys. Your brain views typing on this other keyboard as an entirely new neurological skill than this keyboard. So this is why functional training doesn't exist. There's no such thing as functional training. It doesn't exist because all exercise is functional. What do I mean? Well, if you improve, a movement, whether it be swinging kettlebells like an idiot, like you see all these social media influencers, and they just swing kettlebells like an idiot, thinking that it's going to make them more functional. They don't realize that swinging around kettlebells like an idiot is only going to make them swing kettlebells in the exact same manner. And it's only going to make them better at swinging kettlebells, and it's not going to transfer to anything else. Same with plyometric drills. So I was a gymnast. My gymnastics coach made me do all these plyometric drills, right? And, he thought that this would transfer over to vault or floor exercise. When in reality, it doesn't. It doesn't. Because plyometric drills and the way your nervous system recruits motor units to bounce over blocks is not the same type of activity or the same type of skill as doing vault. Remember, same activity, typing on keyboard, but how come this keyboard won't transfer to the other one? It's because they're different skills, even if they're the same activity. So what makes you think that doing plyometric drills is going to somehow transfer over to floor exercise or vault? And explosiveness. Being explosive is activity specific. This is known as skill transfer. Our body does not transfer skills between different movements or different, even similar movements. Just because movement is similar does not mean it will actually transfer. This is because our bodies are highly specific. This is known as the law of specificity, right? So I hope you guys understand that you guys should not be trying to do functional training. You guys should be practicing the exact skill of a particular movement. So if you're an athlete and you want to practice, running on the field in a very specific way, you're going to have to do exactly that. There's no point in doing all these juggling exercises with kettlebells in the weight room, thinking that, all these drills are going to make you transfer over, because all the drills that you're doing, right, that your football coach makes you do, is not going to transfer over onto the field when you actually play the actual game. And same with gymnastics. All these plyometric drills and all these drills that look like the skill is not actually going to transfer over to the actual skill. It's not going to actually transfer to the explosiveness when it comes to vault. Because if you want to be more explosive, doing a very particular vault exercise, like let's say a suk or a kaz, you're going to have to practice more kaz. You're going to have to practice more of the suk. Okay, you're going to have to practice more of the exact same movement. Just because the movement is similar does not mean it'll transfer. Because remember, just because it's similar does not mean it's identical. Your nervous system views similar movements as completely different skills. Just like how this keyboard, even though it's similar to another keyboard, just because it's similar is not enough. Because my nervous system has adapted to this keyboard, and it's not going to transfer to this other keyboard. Because like I said, you can have negative transfer, which means that it'll actually make it worse. You go to the other keyboard, and you're like making all these mistakes, and you're inaccurate, and this is skill transfer. Neurologically, our brains are wired to learn skills at a very specific rate, which means that there is no point in trying to do all these stupid plyometric drills and explosive weight training. Because here's the thing, those are activity specific. The only people that should be training explosively in the weight room are powerlifters. Why? Because that's the actual sport. Powerlifters are meant to train explosively, right? Because that's their sport. Their sport is to just learn how to move the most amount of weight. Remember, the goal of powerlifters are they're trying to move the most amount of weight, not necessarily fatigue the muscle or grow the most amount of muscle strength, right? Moving weight on a bench is highly specific in terms of its skill. So that's why powerlifters, they're actually trying to not rely on their body as much as bodybuilders. Like when bodybuilders are trying to do their thing, they're trying to only focus on fatiguing the muscle. That's what we should be doing in the weight room. Like athletes should be actually doing this in the weight room, all right? But the only people that should be explosive in the weight room are powerlifters because that's the actual sport. They're actually practicing that. But remember, these powerlifters still have to practice lifting the bench in the exact same explosive manner in order for them to do that in their competition or doing a deadlift or doing a squat. But like I said, that's their sport. If you're a gymnast, if you're a football player, if you're a basketball player, you should not be doing this. You should not be training explosively in the weight room. You should treat strength training as exercise only, and you should only be focused on fatiguing muscle in the weight room, not training explosively, not doing all this bullshit functional training, and you should only be focused on, guess what? Doing the exact same movements of your sport. So you're just gonna have to practice more of the sport. It won't transfer. It has zero transfer. Like I said, I can give the keyboard example. Just because it's the same activity, typing on a keyboard, like two different type of keyboards that seem similar is not going to transfer because your body adjusts, your bodies are very specific at adjusting these things. So that's why just because a movement is similar to a certain movement does not mean it'll transfer, right? We've known this since the 1940s. We've known this for over like 70 years. So this is, already been proven and debunked. And, this is the truth about exercise, guys. This is the truth about our neurological system and how it learns motor skills, right? It's just the fact that our bodies are highly specific when it comes to the rate at which we learn motor skills. And the same with language. Like, even with English and language learning, I know a lot about this. Even like the way we acquire languages is highly specific. Like the moment you change like a grammar pattern in a language, now it all of a sudden starts to become unnatural. If I suddenly start saying I is a cheeseburger or he have a cheeseburger, like we always say he has a cheeseburger, but why like I can't say he have a cheeseburger? Like why can't I just change the English sentence by like that and it'll make it like it won't be correct English? It's because there's a preordained way of the how the English system is structured, and if you try to deviate even a little bit, even if it's similar, like French and Spanish are similar, but that doesn't mean they're identical. You know what I mean? So even in language, like our neurological brain, is very high specific in the way it learns skills. So this is why functional training doesn't exist and why you shouldn't need to train explosively. Because remember, if you're going to train explosively, it's only going to improve being explosive at that exact same activity, and it's not going to transfer, even if those movements are similar. Remember, just because it's similar is not enough. It's not identical. That's the difference. You need to practice the exact identical skill if you want to improve the explosiveness and functional ability of that particular movement.